Right, I think we'll kick off, and thank you. We've got 19 of you in this evening, and thanks so much for joining us. Toby's grabbing a bit of well-deserved leave, so not with us this morning. So you've got myself, Luke, the UK operations manager, and Harry, who is the regional lead for the West Midlands. And like last week, whereas last week was focused on international operations and what was going on, particularly over in Ukraine, tonight is a period of time for us to talk about our future and UK operations and the regional network. So I'll do a quick sort of scene setter, like Toby did last week. I'll then hand over to Luke to talk about the rollout of this regional network at a national level. And then we'll go and hear from Harry and understand what is going on in the West Midlands with both that regional laydown and the rapid response team concept. So hopefully that works for everyone. And then at the end, we've obviously managed to crack the ability for people to talk. So rather than, I think, having to type, we'll be able to take questions verbally rather than people typing them in. So really just to, if I can just sort of do a scene setter for you all, and those of you who have been with us from pre-COVID will remember that we were in those days, for the 2018s, very internationally focused. And we'd never really found our niche in the UK resilient scene, if you want to put it like that. You know, we had done some good operations responding to flooding, but to use Toby's words, we weren't particularly well known, respected or trusted in that space. And I remember when I first turned up as the ops director and trying to respond to the flooding in Doncaster, and no one quite knowing what it was that we offered and our capability offering. And then, of course, COVID kicked off, and we very much redirected all our efforts from that international space into the UK space, and had the incredible 2 years that you have all played your part in to get us to the position we are now, where, you know, like the CEO of the British Red Cross says that REACT have redefined what volunteering is in the UK. And we are very much now known, used and respected. You know, even today, looking at the Slack channels, we've had teams supporting Kent County Council on Op Fennel, with all the drivers that are getting stacked on the motorway down to the Dover ports. We've had teams supporting the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain, supporting them with their supply chain out to Ukraine in London. We've got a team supporting Project Felix, which is a food poverty distribution organisation up in London, and Rich McSweeney and his team doing incredible stuff supporting Fair Share Southwest down in Plymouth. So that's just in the last 24 hours, that significant amount of activity going on. So whereas pre-COVID, we were still finding our place in this community, I can say that we're very much now part of UK resilience. And so this next step for us as REACT is making sure we secure our place in the UK resilience infrastructure and architecture, but also to the benefits of REACT. And I think it achieves 5 things from what Luke and Harry are going to talk about. First of all, it's going to hopefully take the sort of pressure valve off us here in the headquarters to be able to run the multiple operations that we are now seeing both domestically and internationally. It helps us with the stakeholder engagement piece within the UK. You know, we've learned during COVID that you can't do stakeholder engagement from our ivory tower in Chilmark. You've got to be out there on the ground, talking to the leads of the local resilience forums, the leads for the NHS trusts, etc., etc. It will help us with the volunteer engagement piece. You know, no longer will we be trying to do that from our offices down here in the Southwest. but we will hopefully get to the position where we have leaders throughout the country that can engage and bring you in to be part of the management of the volunteers within that area. And the last one is to play an important part in business development and fundraising as well. So I think that's enough of a scene setter from me, and I hopefully I haven't stolen too many of Luke's sandwiches. And I'll hand over to him to sort of go more into detail about our plans for this year. Luke.
Yeah, nibbled my sandwiches, Ben. So I think in a useful segue. Yeah, so I think the history is important, and you'll know, you guys, I've just looked at the list here of people on this conference. There's a lot of depth of experience there, and you'll recognise a journey that React's been on. I'm not even talking about Team Rubicon, really. I mean, that was a journey of its own, but even within the last 2 years, it's been big. And I remember talking to Ben last May. We were chatting about it and where we'd be this time next year. And the fact is that we thought we'd be a lot less in demand, only because we expected COVID, like everyone else, to finish, sort of dribble out towards the end of last year. And then we thought we'd be back to where we were potentially, you know, before, where people, you know, you don't get that many crises in UK normally, especially in regions, you know. So if you look even further back, it's sort of the occasional flood, the occasional storm in regions. But so that's what we were talking about back then. But it's, we are benefiting from all your work because we are in demand. What we found is it never turned off. It kept going and going. So we've been talking about this as from a problematic perspective. How do you do better? How does React do this better? There are 3 parts to it. It's been outlined there. You've got basically supply and demand, and how and the institutional capacity to manage that supply and demand. So we know demand is high, not just domestically, but as you've seen recently, internationally. Being known and being credible has meant the doors are open. In fact, you're being pulled through quite a lot of the time. That's not going to go away, okay? And you've seen domestically, we've got 4 or 5 jobs on all the time, not 4 or 5 in a year. If you go way back, that's probably the case. You've got 4 or 5 going on all the time, you know, and these are fairly big jobs. So there's plenty of demand there, which we're just about coping with. Volunteer-wise, we've got a really strong volunteer base. Obviously, none of this works. None of this works at all without a strong volunteer base. And that's something Ben and I talk about a lot, in fact, probably every day, and Paul and Ria. But we recognise ourselves that the main time we talk to you guys is when we want you to do something. Okay, and there's so much more to being a volunteer in React we want to do than just deploying on a given operation over and over again. You know? So there's a lot more need there. So if we didn't change anything, those 2 things would be a bit of an issue. Taking back to demand though, or looking at demand on volunteers, I looked at the demand and thought, could we do more? And we're used, yeah, sure, we're used, very much so. And as Ben said, even Red Cross, which is massive, recognises React. You know, it's come out of nowhere and is now sort of on all these meetings. But I looked at it and said, actually, we're used more regularly in some areas, not in others. So actually, if we did roll this out properly UK-wide, which is what the board want, we'd be used potentially 3 to 4 to 5 times more than we are now. Okay, so that is a great thing, but it's also potentially something that would break us. And similarly, volunteers. So we've got a great depth of volunteers, but across the country, it's patchy. Some areas there's a lot of highly motivated volunteers. In other areas, there are less of them, and not been able to engage because there hasn't been that virtuous cycle of engagement which brings people on, which builds these structures. So we know that there is work to be done there. The big thing that's holding us back, though, is institutional capacity. I think a feather in the cap of our organisation is that it is light on HQ staff. It's still pretty much got the same design, bar some slight tweaking over the last 2 months, quite frankly, but the same design it had to deploy people in operations. That was it. You know, like I say, they did some UK stuff. The main focus was operations. But we've managed all this other stuff as an institution, but we can't grow without making changes. It's just not physically possible for the 4 people in ops to do all this. So that drove the changes. That's the background. The other thing was with the institutional capacity is we didn't want to change too much because it works really well. And the reason it works really well is because the energy and the institution is driven along largely by its volunteers and how good they are and what they're trying to do with it. We don't want to lose that. And the other thing we didn't want to lose either, which was a main takeaway, was in UK, Resilience is local, so we've got to have a strong local presence. I think we've got to have a stronger local presence. It's got to be uniform across the country. I say uniform in terms of our offer, but also uniform in terms of actually what we look like, our branding, who we are. And there are strong reasons for that, just protecting who we are as a major charity now. So we've got all these things going on, which led us to the conclusion, actually, that the thing to do is actually carrying what we're doing, but doing more locally, okay? So each of the regions, of which there are 9, we are rolling out something you'll recognize. Probably some of you will say, yeah, we've been talking about this for years, as I do get, but we're actually doing it now. And we got the board to agree to actually employing a regional leader. Now, regional reps and regional champions before doing an outstanding job. There's no doubt about that. But there is a limitation they've got with time. It's not been a job. It's been something they've been doing with their spare capacity. And for some people, it's been dominating their lives, which we shouldn't be doing to people. And there's been a little bit of overdoing it. And Harry will probably mention that. He'll probably explain what I mean by that. So, but we wanted to professionalize it, and thankfully they've agreed to do that. So we've been able to go ahead with it. But that's not it. It's not like getting a person in there, and I'll talk about what their main buckets are, but it's not just that one person. It's not about that at all. It's trying to create that regional vibe in the same way that if you're, say, a ex-Navy out there or ex-military is the sub-unit unit thing. So you're all REACT. So you're all, I don't know, like Coldstream Guards or Fire Brigade's Fire Brigade, you know, no matter where you go, but you do have regional loyalties as well. And you need that to create the buzz and get to know each other. And within that regional, that region rather, is to be able to get the ones who want to get more involved, join a management team owned or controlled or recruited by the regional leader to ensure they can deliver the outputs that are required by the HQ and required by that region. So it's building that institutional capacity regionally. The main tasks they'll be doing, the main roles really, I've got 4 buckets loosely. One is actually, which is what we're all about, is getting more done. You know, our old adage of get shit done, excuse my French, it's getting more shit done. That's what we're trying to do. Get more people onto more tasks to help more people, being a much more credible and, what's the word, assured response in the crisis. So that's really the output. Okay, to do that, we have to increase local stakeholder engagement. That has to be much better in some areas. Some areas have got it largely pinned down, to be honest, but it is patchy across the country. So that's a focus as well. That's a big lot of work there. It's a big lot of work for those who've done it before, because you're talking about lots of LRFs in the region, local resilience forums. You're talking about a lot of emergency service contacts, a lot of council resilience leaders, and there's a lot of those in any given region as well. And then you've got on top of that all the other stakeholders, which might be local, the GRLOs, the local military, and then you've got all the voluntary groups there, which will be a kaleidoscope within that region, let alone nationally, but in the region there'll be dozens that we need to connect into. That is a lot of work in a year, a lot of meetings, unfortunately, a lot of meetings. So that's a lot of work, and they'll need help for that. The other, another bucket is, which you'll need, is to increase volunteer engagement. And as I say, Ben and I, this has been bugging us for a long time, is how do we get more people to actually get more out of this charity than just going on a job, which is great and feeling good about it, but actually after that connecting, having a social relationship, getting out and doing things just for the sake of it, for a laugh, doing outdoor activities together, whatever it is, to build that bond so that you can deploy better, more effectively. And very much, I think, local training events, driven by perhaps a local training officer working for the regional leader, not delivering the core institutional courses, which will remain the sort of system we've got now, you know, domestic course, international course, and others. But it's more to do with just training together, getting out together, like Mountain Rescue do, like R&I do. They get together and they just work through the drills, talk about what they're doing, and that just makes us better on task, but also builds bonds as volunteers. Then you've got the fundraising side of things, which is it's not really what we've ever wanted to talk about or anything, but it's really important to every charity. It's part of our maturity, maybe part of our growing up as a charity, is taking it a lot more seriously. There have been in the past patches where we've been on the edge, I would say, probably slightly over, because we've taken our eye off that ball. It hasn't been the mainstay because our eye's been on the ball of ops. We've always done ops really, really well, but there's so much more to maintaining ourselves in the long term. And that's we think we're doing things about it nationally, a lot of good work, but regionally, I know there's so much more to be done. And I know that from talking to people like Fred Carruthers in Informal before, talking to London Search and Rescue, how they do their fundraising. It's all local, it's all doable. The only things we need to discuss really is how much is reasonable to go for, and that'll be a discussion at the regional level. And there are also tons of opportunities for, and I know you hate the word, but business development, where people are offering reasonable contracts. They need that resilience, and we're ideal for that. And as Ben mentioned earlier, Opfennel, that's actual real money coming in for doing something that, we could have done that for free, but that's not what they want. They want to give money to help us maintain this capability for a long term. And they're really benefiting from that. But there'll be other ones out there, quite a lot locally, when you start patching in and prove the credibility, which will then add the resilience to you regionally and to us nationally. So we can be here in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And that's what this is about as well, that institutional capacity and longevity. So that's basically what it is. In terms of rollout, just in a nutshell, we're recruiting now in increments because we're too busy to do everything at once. So it's Southwest, Southeast, and the West Midlands. We're actually interviewing this week, and that'll be selected in the next sort of 10 days. And then we will go through a briefing package with them, test and adjust what we're doing, and then go on to the next 3 regions, which off the top of my head, I think was Northeast, London, and I think Wales. And then the final 3 later on. We may add another one. If this goes really well, we might add some more back into the second tranche. We've got to have a look at that. But by the end of the year, we will have a regional leader in every region. Now, every region won't look the same because they'll have different challenges. So whoever's got, say, London is going to have very different challenges to whoever's got the Northeast, whoever's got, Northwest. They're going to be very different volunteer bases, different stakeholder engagement basis, and also different local dynamics. They do things differently. But the institutional laydown will be the same. The branding's the same. The merch is the same. The approach to jobs the same. It's the same RRTs going out there. Okay, and then one final bit is what makes us unique compared to a lot of other charities is maintain that capacity to get out fast and do a good job. And once we've got this capacity across the country, I can see things like the rapid response teams from, if there's a major crisis in Northumbria, we can get people from Scotland, we can get the RRTs from West Midlands, East Midlands. Suddenly you're looking at, actually, that looks like quite a professional, high grade response. If you've got 16 people turning up in the first 6 hours, that's nobody does that. So that's the sort of vision we're trying to get to, which will take time to build. So it's a quite exciting time. It's based on a model I think you'll all understand, but I think Ben and I really would like your views on it. And I'm hoping you can speak, although I think only Bill and Martin Hoy, it must be a Martin thing can speak. But I welcome your thoughts today on that and questions in case I haven't covered anything off.
Luke, thank you very much. And thanks for the cat as well. Part of the brief. I'll hand over to Harry now, who's sort of holding the mantle as regional lead for West Midlands. But as you heard from Luke, we're doing the recruitment over the next couple of weeks. But just to talk about then how this is starting to play out at a regional level and sort of the RRT concept. So Harry, over to you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Luke. Good evening, everybody. So I'm Harry, and I'm the West Midlands regional lead at the moment. I've been doing this since January the 7th last year, 2021. I was sitting quietly at home when I had an email from React asking me if I'd like to look at taking the role on because the previous incumbent was stepping away. At the time, I'm ex-army and I'm retired fire service. And at the time, I was working in a little part-time job in a school next door, 200 yards from my house, looking after a swimming pool. Nothing very tasking or hard at all, but it kept me occupied. And I thought, yes, I'll have a go at this. I'll take some of this on. And I spoke to Ian, who was the previous incumbent. And on January the 7th, he phoned me and said, as of now, you're the regional rep. It's been really quiet, mate. You'll be okay. Famous last words. The very next day, the floodgates opened and it went absolutely ballistic. And since then, I don't think there's been a week where there hasn't been a task in the West Midlands of some description until the last couple of weeks when muster ended. And we're quiet at the moment, touching wood. So yeah, so that's the background of my position in the West Midlands. On top of that, around about July last year, the East Midlands rep, Sam Fityan, up sticks and emigrated to Australia. So Luke kindly asked me if I'd keep an eye on the East Midlands as well. Now, the West Midlands isn't a small region, it's not the biggest, but the East Midlands region is massive in comparison. So yeah, so I've been looking after 2 regions since then. I had a look on the regional champions dashboard earlier today, just to refresh myself on the volunteers in our region. In the West Midlands, we have 152 volunteers, which isn't a great deal, but of those, only 67 are active. And of those 152, only 25 have done the domestic responder course. Now, for me, that's an issue because I can talk to the 25 on Slack on the responder channel, but I can't engage with the other 127 because they are sponvols. I don't have their details. I don't know who they are. I know the odd one. I don't know who they all are. They don't know me. They don't have my details. So I'm a bit concerned about engagement there. And that's one of the things I want you to get on top of is this volunteer engagement. Don't want to lose volunteers because we're not talking to them. So that's one thing I'd be keen to deal with. Also in that number, we have 4 international responders and 2 have done the OLC course, operational leader course. 67% of the volunteers in the Midlands have got links with the military or the emergency services. The average age is 48. And the largest age group in the West Midlands is the age group 51 to 60. So we're getting on a bit. We've got some talented people, though, in the West Midlands. If we look at them individually, we've got ex-nuclear submarine engineers. We've got sappers. We've got a head teacher, cybersecurity experts, a flood and water rescue expert, electrical engineers, logisticians. So within that number, we've got some really talented and clever people, and we should be using those, and we are going to use those. So thinking about it, they've got tactical and strategic abilities, thinking abilities. They've got command experience, leadership management, decision makers, technical know-how. So these are very useful people to have as volunteers. They're all humanitarians, obviously. 59% of the people in the West Midlands who have volunteered said they joined REACT to help other people. And they all sit within our aims and objectives. We've got a couple of really exciting things going on in the West Midlands at the moment. First and foremost, Commonwealth Games, not far away. And we've got Perry, who's leading that and raising or attempting to raise up to 500 volunteers for the Commonwealth Games. We are an official partner, a veteran provided partner for the Commonwealth Games. One of my hopes is that of those 500, a considerable number will stay behind and become volunteers within the region. The other thing that's going on is the Rapid Response Team, which you may have heard of. And the purpose of the Rapid Response Team, or the idea behind it, is we have, as a charity, got a good reputation for responding quickly to incidents. And we're building on that. The Rapid Response Team concept is to turn out a team leader to an incident for which a tactical command group has been stood up. Now, in that command group, in that bronze or silver cell, there will be a police officer of superintendent rank, a senior fire officer, a senior ambulance officer, all the tier 1 responders. And we will send somebody along, and we are guaranteeing, given the assurance that that team leader will arrive at the tactical command group within 4 hours. And the purpose of that is to speak to the commander and say, we're voluntary sector. If you wish, we can take on that role for you. Look after the voluntary sector response. Take that away from the silver commander's shoulders. one less thing for them to worry about. They will respond within 4 hours and they will do a needs assessment. Within 6 hours, 3 more volunteers will arrive as part of the RR team, RR rapid response team, and they will be delegated tasks by the team leader. To manage that, we've recruited a team of 28 responders, 28 volunteers. Of those 28 volunteers, 22 have done the domestic response course. The other 6 are waiting their turn. So 28 is a good number, and we should be able to assure that we will turn out a team of 4, 365 days a year, be it a Monday afternoon or 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So we will turn out with that rapid response team. I think that's about it. And now the rapid response team is up and running. We are learning as we go along. It's a steep learning curve. We've been helping to write a handbook of how to run a rapid response team with an intern, Ben Cook, from headquarters. And the team has got, I'll give you a breakdown of the team. Of the 28, we have a team leader, a deputy team leader, and 4 assistant team leaders. Now, those 4 assistant team leaders and the deputy team leader have all got a responsibility. One's got communications, one's got training, one's got kit and equipment, that kind of a thing. And then all the volunteers sitting beneath them will all sit within one of those roles to help the team leaders with those duties. So those groups have been working over the last few weeks to build the handbook for rapid response teams. The draft of that is now up and running and ready for tweaking, and should be soon ready for publishing. That will be changeable as a rapid response team evolves and learns, and things are fed back to headquarters, and it may need to be tweaked. I think that's all for now. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
That's brilliant, Harry.
Over to you, Ben.
Thank you very much indeed. We've got 15 minutes, so keen to hear from you all. I think Ian Brannan was first off the mark, probably to tell Harry that it actually wasn't that. It was quite busy beforehand. But Ian, over to you.
Yes, it was very busy. Thank you, Harry. Yeah, just it's more of an observation than a question. Harry's mentioned the fact that it's very difficult to communicate with sponvols who are not on the Slack channels because they haven't done the domestic responders course, and it seems a bit chicken and eggish to me. If you can't communicate with those guys effectively because they're not on your system, what do we do about that, and how do we break that circle of not being able to talk to them?
Yeah.
Do you want to take that one, Luke?
Yeah, I could say that. Yeah, no, we discussed this before. You know, I hate it. It really annoys me, probably on a daily basis. It's the problem lies to do with the plumbing of the system we got set up. As I say, it wasn't necessarily designed for what it's delivering. That is changing. Chris Lyon is looking at other options. We don't want to rush into that, obviously. It's looking in long term, but trying to make what we've got now work will happen. The regional leaders, once they're in, will be then inducted and trained, and then on several different systems that allow them to access sponvols and then get sponvols in that region onto that regional channel as well. There are long debates about it. There are issues to do with GDPR, which I must say I don't fully understand, because I would move them on a lot quicker. But there are very good reasons, institution where you have to there is a time lag. But it is critical, though. I get it. And I agree. It's critical we do it, and it will be done. But we kind of we've wrapped it up in this whole package of activation, this different sort of regional laydown. I also think part of it will be, what I want is, let's say I was running the East Midlands, I would go on then try and find somebody to go on the team to help me make sure Slack runs properly for everyone and communicates. So there's more to it than just the system. It's making sure that somebody's monitoring it who's not in HQ. Because again, there's only sort of one person who can't monitor 2,500 conversations. So we need that local institutional resilience as well to make sure it doesn't go crazy. But you're absolutely right, Ian, and you know, when we discussed this, you know I agree. It will change. It is going to change this year.
Great, thank you. I think Liz was the next hand up, and then we're going to go to Martin Bull and then Rick Charlton. So Liz.
Right, just got to do the old unmute bit before.
We've got you. We've got you.
Yeah, okay. Well, I attended the domestic responders course the other weekend, had a great time. I first came into contact with the organisation as Team Rubicon because I chair the Tier 3 responders for Suffolk and have done for many years. Hopefully handing over that baton later this year. But I have to say, they didn't cover themselves with glory. They didn't. I think they attended one meeting, could never get in contact with the named contact. And during COVID, they didn't respond to anything. However, during COVID, I got a load of phone calls and a load of updates from Johnny Winiat Hughesy.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of got inveigled into getting a bit more involved, which I have done. Suffolk didn't use many volunteers at all during COVID. They were very, very self-reliant. And I think one of the reasons that they didn't use Rubicon or React was because they weren't getting much in the way of response. Now, I did at the time say that, I was willing to kind of hold the banner for React during COVID, and I've got an email somewhere which said, oh yes please, so I've been holding that banner for React for probably about 18 months, although it's probably disappeared from your side of that, it's probably disappeared under a pile somewhere. But I would certainly like to echo a lot of the thoughts that have been already expressed regarding training. I've no idea when the next domestic responder training is. I am concerned that the organisation could become a victim of its own success and set itself up for failure. And I acknowledge that some areas will use it more than others, but Suffolk is certainly very unresponsive about sharing its information from the LRF. They're not very good at it at all. And it's one of the things that I did feed in under the recent review for the Civil Contingencies Act. And they were actually quite aware of that on the team. So, but also with the CCA review, I think there is going to be a growing opportunity for the organisation as well. And I can't remember whether they've been mentioned. It's 350 odd pages, the full thing, and I haven't had a chance to really wade through it, but I also was involved because I chair the counter-terrorism advisory network for this region. So, there are all sorts of ways to get involved, but I do have some sort of overall concerns about the amount of trained people that you're going to have to be able to respond to your demands.
Yeah, no, I think thanks, Liz. And I think on the Civil Contingencies Act review, I was actually interviewed by Bruce Mann, who's headed up that review.
Yeah.
And he's actually coming down to see Luke and myself towards the end of the month, actually, to pick up on a number of the points that was raised from that review, which is nice that we've got that level of engagement, and it goes back to this piece of now being known and trusted, and people want to engage with us, which is great. Going back into your sort of the sort of pre-COVID days, absolutely. Those who have been with the organisation longer than me will know that we tried to do this regional network piece once before. And I think where it failed was not because of the people that stepped up in the regions, but actually that we didn't set ourselves up correctly in the headquarters to manage that. And that's why I'm pleased that we've now got Luke on board as the UK operations manager to be able to focus on that, as well as a team that can focus internationally. And I hear you about, being a victim of our own success. And I think that's where we just need to be very careful and prescriptive as to what we do to ensure that we are responding when required to bridge the gap before the other big players can come into place, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was also interviewed by Bruce Mann and Kathy Settle, for the CCA review. So yeah, that it was a very long interview as well. So
yeah.
So just
Thank
conscious
you.
as others, Liz, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to one last thing. One of the reasons as well we're building an institutional resilience at a regional level is they will be on different pathways and journeys. There are less volunteers in the regions you're talking about.
oh yeah, absolutely.
So we either walk away and go, well, it's not going to work there, or we actually go, let's build it. And that'll take time. And I think there's never been a 5-year plan. There is now. We're going to spend time looking at it, building it, and at certain times get more HQ assets to try and build that up. But you will, if it works, you will get to a tipping point when they'll use you and then use you again. And then suddenly, as we saw in other areas, it does actually build up. That's the sort of virtuous cycle we're looking at. And I know it's not there yet in the East Midlands, we know that. But this is our way of trying to fix it. Because I don't think it would be good if we just binned it. That was the other option.
Yeah, also on fundraising, there's a fundraising online discussion tomorrow about people doing emergency services support, and I'm involved in that discussion as well. So anyway, I'm sure there's other people queuing up to talk.
Sally, who have we got next? Is it Martin? Martin Bull?
We have Rick next, I think, and then Martin.
Yeah, Rick, far away.
Hi guys. Hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, got
we
you, Rick.
can.
Yeah, nice one. It's just very difficult to tell when you're blind. So it's really exciting stuff, and I think it really sort of feeds towards the national resilience picture, and I think it's a great force multiplier in each of the regions. What's being proposed. I'm like Harry. I'm ex-firefighter and ex-army, and I was a national interagency liaison officer. And one of the key things that we worked out as a NILO was that it's better to make your build your relationships in peacetime. And I think there's a real opportunity here, those regional leaders and teams to actually exercise more, not just with the LRFs and with the Cat 1 responders, but also with other third sector responders such as Harry Mountain Rescue, Bay Search and Rescue, Coast Guard, all of the other people that you could probably need to interoperate with, because what I found when I was operations commander in Cockermouth in the fire service during the floods was there was an element of standoffishness with the third sector responders until they got to realize that they weren't standing on each other's toes. And the key thing there is to build those relationships in peacetime, to get to know each other, so that you're not meeting each other for the first time on the fire ground. So I suppose the question really that's bounded in all of that is there an intent that is going to happen? Are we going to have a regional drilling and exercising, integrated drilling and exercising program with the other third sector responders, etc., etc.?
I think I'll quickly, and then I'll hand over to maybe Harry. I think the Civil Contingencies Act thing that I was just talking about there with Liz, the review, that is one of its key recommendations, is greater recognition of the voluntary sector and greater exercising, of which I think we have a skill set to potentially help others to do. But Harry, I saw your hand flick up and keen to hear another voice.
Yeah, hi Rick, you're right.
All right,
mate. I completely agree that we should be meeting our counterparts before the emergency happens. One of the things that I have been thinking about is along those lines. As you know, I'm ex-mountain rescue as well as fire service, so I've got a lot of contacts in the mountain rescue teams in the area. Like you and I, the Lowland Rescue Manager for Staffordshire is an ex-colleague, ex-station manager in Stoke-on-Trent. So I know him very well. So that's one of the things I'm looking at, perhaps some sort of partnership there. We don't do their jobs because they're very niche, but they often are looking for bodies to rescue, for the search dogs to look for, that kind of thing. So there could be some collaboration there, and we'll get to know them and they'll get to know us. And so, yeah, that's on the cards, I hope, Rick.
Yeah, no, it makes absolute sense, because what we do is very different to what all of they do. They all respond to rescue. We respond to plug the gaps. And I think they need to understand that we're there to plug those gaps. And once they're comfortable with that, then we won't have that standoffishness that I found at Cockermouth, where I thought there was going to be a fight at one point. But
Yeah, you're right, Rick. You're absolutely right. All the words you're using as well are huge buzzwords which should be used more often. So relationships, local, exercising together. The whole point of us, again, driving along this regional route, building institutional capacity regionally, is that we do more of that locally, because there's no point in someone in Cockermouth having a relationship with me in the HQ. It's meaningless, doesn't it? Even if I turn up for an exercise. So this sort of thing is exactly what we need to be doing regionally, because otherwise we simply won't get used. And the RRT is all about providing that assurance and credibility where they want you there. They're not saying, oh, these guys. They're actually ringing you to say, come along, because they know you. Yeah. They know they can trust you, and they know you'll be there when they want you there. And that's us assessing actually what the emergency services want, not what we want to give them, but what they want on the job. And that's a very different analysis, but it's absolutely what you talk about, Rick, which is not surprising because you're a fireman.
Yeah, well, I just thought I'd throw it in there because I think it's a really great opportunity.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, mate. But it'll need people like you out there making it happen. You know, that it won't happen through the HQ. It's going to happen through the regions.
Yeah, got it. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Sally, who we got now? Is it Martin?
Yeah, Martin, you're up. So there you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, good to Martin.
Yeah. Okay. I've had some of my thunder taken away by Liz and Harry, but I'll try and fill in with a few more other comments. I can really empathise with what Harry said about the number of people who react in those regions. And I was quite surprised by the number of active personnel who are available to actually respond to any EOIs or whatever else in those regions.
You think that was big or small, Martin?
What, the number of people?
You said you were surprised. You mean surprisingly low or surprisingly high?
Low.
Yeah.
You know, if we've got, was it 165, I think it was, and about 20 odd people who can actually respond. Have we done any analysis to find out why? One of the reasons that I'm quite interested in this is that I've tried to pick up bits and pieces over the past year to 18 months because I've got family issues. Apart from having a replacement kneecap as well. And I've felt a little bit, stuck to one side that I can't really do anything. And a couple of times I've tried to engage with people to find out whether in fact there's anything I can do from home. And probably what I'm looking at is that my background is not boots on ground. You'd probably call it brogues on ground. I was mainly working in the commercial sector. But I've done a lot of work with the Crisis, the homeless charity, which is where I was introduced to Rubicon, but then React. And I suppose what I've done in the work in the commercial sector is be like the glue that brings things together and helps control, to take some of the pressure off the leads like Harry, take some of the pressure off of head office. So that some of the responsibilities can be disseminated and picked up by people who have probably got the time but can't actually get their feet on the ground or boots on the ground because of their own personal circumstances. And there's got to be a lot of resource and experience that can potentially do that. So, for instance, in Harry's situation, somebody who could maybe engage with the 140 or 130 people who are not active and try and identify why they're not active and what they could be, what would make them more liable to engage, what's stopping them from engaging, and then try to find ways in which they can actually help with resources.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think this is again goes back to, I think, Luke's original point about our capacity at headquarters to understand the volunteer network. And this is where this regional piece will absolutely play its part, because this is where Harry or whoever is the regional lead for a region can create their own management team within that can bring people like yourself in to do exactly this. You know, this very much wants to be a group thing that all volunteers within that region have bought into and play their part in it. And you know, Luke frequently uses this thing about sort of creating this vibe within an area that is self-generating. So absolutely agree with everything you've said there, and our need to understand you all better so you can all play your part in this. I think the last one on from me on this is we've been doing a lot of head scratching over the last couple of weeks about how to better understand you. And I know we've now got a people team and an HR team, which we're calling a people team, which is fantastic, that is going to be putting out a survey in the next couple of weeks as well to help better understand you all and how better we can get you all engaged.
Can I get another couple of points there?
Yeah, just quickly, because I just want to make sure we get everyone in, and I'm far
Okay,
away,
so
Martin.
The first is growing too fast and setting ourselves up for failure.
Yeah.
So in other words, do we have a model that can determine by region what our capacity is to respond? Because if we get into a situation where we get too many requests and we've got to turn them down, then that could switch people off of React.
Can I take that one, Ben?
Yeah, do.
It's in terms of model. Actually, it's kind of outsourcing a mini HQ. So we have that problem at the national level. So we get tasks in. We have to decide. I have to decide. Ben screens any sort of major decisions, but Paul and I decide quite regularly which ones we can and can't do. And it is based on two things, which is could we and should we. You know, the could we bit is actually do we have the right people for it. We've been very good at. We're very lucky actually. Most of the jobs we get in, we pull off quite dramatically. Actually, you guys deliver very well, but we don't by no means take everything on. And it's about assessment. What I can't do, what I've struggled with, and Harry and I have discussed this a lot, is knowing whether we've got that base there. I can see we've got people out there. I just don't know if they're engaged or not, what level. So it's always a bit of a guess. The way to break that is by having a relationship, using a word Rick used earlier on. So it's critical. That team leader and that management team should need to have a relationship with everybody in their region, and then know roughly actually who's around, you know, because there should be that talk, that discussion, have a much better idea than we can about 2,500 people. You can have a good idea about 100, 150, 200. If you're working as a team, it's kind of subunit size. It's very difficult to know for sure with 2,800, of which half don't engage very often anyway. So this, again, that regional leadership, that regional management is going to do that. That's the point. That's the other reason we're employing that person, is because it's time consuming and that person will need to do it as a full-time job.
Sure.
I think you underestimate yourself, Martin, as well. I know you've been out on loads of tasks, mate. You are a legend. But doing more on the management side, the opportunities are coming up. You're Southeast, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. So when the Southeast rep gets inducted, which I think it's in June, we're going to do the full induction, they sort of launch themselves. You'll see them asking for management support, and there's no reason why you can't throw your hat in the ring. And then how they do it, they may go for county reps themselves, or they may actually go, right, I want a fundraiser or a Slack. But it's getting those 5 or 6 people together and just talking how they're going to energize that region and get to know people. That's the thing, get to know who our volunteers are in so much more detail than we can ever achieve in a headquarters.
But those people can be a matrix across the regions because they're not then geographically associated.
Yeah. And it's down to the region to assess it. Each region is different. They've got very different demographics. London is totally different to the Northeast. It's going to have a different approach, but the model is the same, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. And just the last very quick point, not looking for any feedback, but to me, process and best practice avoids the wheel being reinvented, and it also facilitates people going cross region. Do we have a repository or processes and best practices that we share with other regions?
So that is absolutely the idea of Harry's rapid response team pilot, is what we're trying to do there, and also actually why we're not rolling this out in one go. We want to learn as we go on this.
Sure. And
so the experiences that Harry's and the rapid response team that Steph is heading up in the West Midlands, we're getting that going, which we can then start to roll it out. And really that team will then go to where we're going to do the next one. And they'll very much be the trainers to help it get built in the southwest, or where we decide to go next with that. And I think that will be very much the same with the regional leads. We're starting southeast, southwest, and West Midlands slowly to learn the lessons, capture them, and then be able to pass them on to the next session as we roll it out.
To be fair, there have been lessons learned quite a lot. We do the regional champs meet twice a month now, and we talk about various issues. And HQ talks a lot about learning from each job to come off. They're trying to get that widely disseminated. I think would be wrong. We'd end up fixed trying to send these things out. It's about whether it works or not. But again, once you've got a regional management, it's going to be much easier to disseminate and discuss those lessons in a useful way, in a task and a people-friendly way, rather than just having a list. So that does happen actually, Martin, you know, which is why we've had one of the reasons why we've had regular success is because we do assess what's working, what's not. And the RRT is a good example of looking at best practice and going, actually, this product is from better analysing what works and how it works, and actually what's our best offer. That wasn't just in the West Midlands, that was lessons identified across the region. So we're able to do that, and we do that. But I think we'll be able to do it much better when we have a proper management, a regional structure.
Sure, thank you.
We've already gone over time, and thank you for all of you who have stayed with us. Is anyone got any final burning question, or Sally, have we missed anyone?
No, we did have a comment from Mike and Julie to everyone's. I'm halfway through the chat, so apologies if it's not been seen, about Operation Pace Rear Logs is a good example of using remote home-based resources to carry out tasks that are essentially admin. But that's where we are now.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, we haven't seen it, but people have volunteered in roles which are home-based. We've got that. We're working with some of the moments, training them up to help us in the HQ. So it is happening to a degree, but we think it's got a lot more mileage. We just need to know people better to do that. And then people can assess whether they can take jobs on. And as I said before, we are running a high level of tasks as a HQ's perspective, but if we grow a lot more, we're going to have to do this anyway. It's going to be a key part of the model.
Harry, any final thoughts from you?
No, other than right now is a very exciting time within the regions, and there's a lot going on, and it'll be good for people to just keep their eye in and see what's happening, and we can feed that back.
Brilliant, thank you. Luke, any finals from yourself?
No, apart from, you know, it is all about you. I always say it, but it's not a cliche. It is all about you guys. Just please keep going, keep doing what you're doing, because everyone loves it. I think they think it's ace.
Thank you, and thanks. I think someone's just sort of said thank you for the session, and thank you all for joining us, and for Harry and Luke tonight. I think the last piece from me is that I want this not to be a rollout that is just led from the headquarters. As Luke said there, everyone should play a part in making this happen and shaping our future, because that's exactly who React is you, the volunteers, and taking this forward. It shouldn't be the Good Ideas Club coming out of Chilmark, but us as an organisation moving forward together. So thank you for everyone who's been with us tonight. Look out for that volunteer engagement survey that I know Jane, the new people director, is putting out soon. And keep doing what you're doing and responding to those AOIs. It's massively appreciated. Thanks, everyone. Have a very good night.
Night, everyone.
And we'll see you.
Everyone.